The cafeteria of the starship Harmony fell silent when Captain Drix announced their next destination. The four-armed Centaurian's blue skin had turned a pale shade that meant serious trouble. Around the room, crew members from 6 different species stopped eating and stared at their captain with wide eyes. Keth Savan, Captain Drix said again, letting the words hang in the air like a death sentence. The Science Council wants biological samples from the jungle world. They say it's for medical research that could save millions of lives across the galaxy. Dr. Kell, the ship's senior xenobiologist, dropped her spoon into her soup bowl. Tall, gray-skinned woman had studied dangerous creatures on dozens of worlds, but even she looked worried. Captain, you know what happened to the last 3 expeditions to that planet? Complete crew losses. Every single person. Tommy Walsh, sitting at the corner table with his tray of Earth food, leaned forward with interest. At 22 years old, he was the newest crew member aboard the Harmony. Fresh out of the Terran Space Academy, he had joined the ship just 2 weeks ago as a junior xenobiologist. His short brown hair was still regulation cut, and his uniform was so new it still had creases from the package. "What makes Keth-7 so dangerous?" Tommy asked, his voice cutting through the worried murmurs of the other crew members. Commander Voss. The ship's security chief turned to look at the young human. The massive, bear-like creature had thick brown fur and teeth that could bite through metal. The Shadow Maws, rookie. Apex predators that make your Earth tigers look like house cats. Tommy's eyes lit up with curiosity instead of fear. Tell me more about them. Dr. Kell pulled up a holographic display above her table. The image showed a creature that made everyone in the cafeteria step back instinctively. The Shadow Maw stood 12 feet tall on powerful legs, its body covered in dark. Scales that seemed to absorb light, massive claws extended from its hands, each one longer than Tommy's forearm. Its head was elongated like a wolf's, but with intelligence gleaming in its yellow eyes. "They're not just big and strong," Dr. Kell explained, her voice tight with worry. "Their hide can deflect energy weapons. Those claws can cut through starship hull plating. They move through jungle canopy like ghosts despite their size. But the worst part is their intelligence. They don't just hunt you, they study you, learn your patterns, set traps." The ship's engineer, a small furry creature named Pip, chittered nervously. The first expedition thought they were safe in their fortified base camp. The Shadow Maws watched them for 3 days, then attacked at the exact moment when half the team was asleep and the other half was changing guard shifts. The second expedition tried to study them from orbit, added Nyx, the insectoid communications specialist. Her antenna twitched as she spoke. The Shadow Maws somehow figured out their observation patterns and stayed hidden for weeks. When the team finally landed to investigate, the creatures were waiting for them. Tommy nodded thoughtfully, completely unbothered by the frightening descriptions. "What about the third expedition?" Commander Voss growled low in his throat. "They went in with heavy weapons and military-grade armor. Full combat gear, energy shields, the works. Found their equipment scattered across 5 square miles of jungle. Shadow Maws had torn through their defenses like they were made of paper. But how do they coordinate so well?" Tommy asked, leaning forward eagerly. "Do they have a pack structure? A hierarchy? Some kind of communication system?" The other crew members exchanged glances. Dr. Kell looked at Tommy like he was asking about the weather instead of discussing the galaxy's most feared predators. "Tommy, these creatures have killed over 40 trained scientists and soldiers. They're not interesting research subjects, they're death machines." "Everything is an interesting research subject," Tommy replied with a smile. "My mom always said that back on Earth, she was a veterinarian. And she taught me that every animal has its own logic, its own reasons for doing what it does, even the dangerous ones." Captain Drix cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention back to him. "The Science Council has made this mission mandatory. They need samples of Keth-7's ecosystem for developing treatments for the Rigel plague. Without those samples, entire star systems could be wiped out." "When do we leave?" Tommy asked, already pulling out his datapad to research everything he could find about Keth-7's environment. "You're not going," Dr. Kell said firmly. "This is my mission. I'll take Commander Voss and a small security team. You'll stay on the ship where it's safe. Tommy looked up from his data pad with confusion. But I'm a xenobiologist. This is exactly the kind of mission I trained for. You trained in classrooms and safe laboratories, Commander Voss pointed out. You've never even seen a hostile alien creature, let alone one that could kill you with a single swipe of its claws. That's exactly why I need to go, Tommy insisted. I don't have any preconceived notions about these shadow moths. Everyone else is already afraid of them before we even get there. How can you study something objectively when you're terrified of it? Dr. Kell stared at the young human for a long moment. There was something almost innocent about his enthusiasm, as if he genuinely didn't understand the danger they were discussing. Tommy, fear keeps scientists alive on dangerous worlds. Without it, you make mistakes that get people killed. But maybe fear also makes us miss important details, Tommy suggested. What if these shadow moths aren't just mindless killers? If there's more to their behavior than we understand, the cafeteria had grown quiet again. With everyone listening to the conversation between the veteran scientist and the rookie, Captain Drix finally spoke up, his voice heavy with reluctance. The boy has a point, the captain said slowly. Every expedition so far has approached Keth 7 with military tactics and defensive strategies. Maybe it's time to try a different approach.
Hey, Doctor.
Kell opened her mouth to protest, but Captain Drix held up one of his forehands. I'm not saying we go in unprepared, but having a fresh perspective might help us understand what we're dealing with. The Science Council specifically requested that we bring our full xenobiology team, the captain continued. That includes our newest member. Besides, Tommy will be safely inside our mobile research station at all times. The station has energy, shields and armor plating that can withstand anything short of a direct starship weapon hit. Tommy grinned and started making notes on his datapad. I'll need to review all the previous expedition reports and study the environmental data. Oh, and I should research pack hunting behaviors in similar ecosystems. This is going to be amazing. Dr. Kell watched the young human's excitement with a mixture of admiration and dread. She had seen that same eager curiosity in young scientists. Usually right before they made fatal mistakes on dangerous worlds. But there was something different about Tommy, something genuinely innocent and hopeful that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, his fresh eyes might see something that everyone else had missed, as the crew dispersed to prepare for their departure. To Keth 7, Tommy remained in the cafeteria, surrounded by holographic displays of jungle environments and predator behavioral patterns. He was completely absorbed in his research, already planning how he would approach the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy with nothing but curiosity and a genuine desire to understand them. None of them knew that in just a few days Tommy's unconventional thinking would change everything they thought they knew about the legendary shadow moths of Keth 7. The mobile research station touched down on Keth 7's surface with a heavy thud that shook the jungle floor. Through the reinforced windows, Tommy could see a wall of green vegetation so thick it blocked out most of the sunlight. Massive trees, stretched up toward the sky, their trunks wider than the research station itself. Vines hung like curtains between the branches, and strange flowers glowed with soft bioluminescent light in the shadows. Atmospheric readings are good, Nix announced from her communications console. Oxygen levels compatible with most crew species. Temperature is warm and humid. No immediate toxic readings. Dr. Kell checked her instruments and frowned. I'm picking up movement signatures all around us. Lots of them. The local wildlife is definitely aware we're here, Commander Voss powered up the station's defensive systems. Energy shields hummed to life around the mobile laboratory, creating a protective barrier that could stop most weapons and claws. Perimeter is secure. Motion sensors are active. We should be safe inside the station. Tommy pressed his face against one of the observation windows, trying to get a better look at the alien jungle. Everything was so green and alive, with movement in every direction as small creatures scurried through the underbrush. This place is incredible. Look at the biodiversity. I can see at least 6 different species of flying creatures from here. Stay focused on the mission, Dr. Kell reminded him as she began setting up her sample collection equipment. We need biological specimens from as many different species as possible. The Science Council's research depends on getting a complete picture of this ecosystem. For the first few hours, everything went smoothly. The team collected plant samples using remote gathering arms that extended from the station. Pip, the engineer, deployed several small drones to capture flying insects and photograph the canopy above them. Tommy documented everything he saw, making detailed notes about animal behaviors and plant structures. Then Dr. Kell's bioscanner began beeping urgently. "What is it?" Commander Voss asked, moving quickly to look at her readings. Dr. Kell's face went pale as she stared at the display. "Large life form. Very large. It's moving through the trees about 200 meters north of us." "How large?" Tommy asked, looking up from his sample cataloging. 12 feet tall, dense bone structure, muscle mass consistent with a heavy predator. Dr. Kell's voice was tight with worry. "It's a shadow maw. Adult size, probably mature." Commander Voss immediately activated all the station's defensive protocols. Additional armor plating slid into place over the windows. Weapon systems came online with a low humming sound. "Everyone stay calm. We're safe inside the station. The creature can't get through our shields." Tommy moved to the scanner display, watching the red dot that represented the shadow maw as it moved through the jungle. "It's following us," he observed. "Look at the movement pattern, staying parallel to our course, maintaining the same distance." "Shadow maws are known to stalk their prey before attacking," Dr. Kell said grimly. "It's probably studying us, learning our patterns." For the rest of the day, the shadow maw kept pace with their mobile research station as it moved slowly through the jungle. The creature never came close enough for them to see it clearly, but the bioscanner tracked its every movement. It seemed to know exactly where they were at all times, even when they changed direction or stopped to collect samples. "This is unusual behavior," Tommy noted as he reviewed the tracking data. "Most predators would either attack quickly or give up and find easier prey. This one is being very patient. Patient predators are the most dangerous kind, Commander," Voss growled. "It's waiting for us to make a mistake or show weakness." As night fell, the jungle came alive with new sounds. Creatures called to each other through the darkness, their voices ranging from musical chirps to deep, resonant roars. The research station's lights created a small circle of safety in the vast darkness of the alien jungle. "The shadow maw is still out there," Dr. Kell reported, checking her scanners. "It's moved closer, about 50 meters now." Through the armored windows, they could occasionally see glowing yellow eyes reflecting their lights. The eyes were large and intelligent, watching them with an intensity that made everyone nervous except Tommy. "It's curious about us," Tommy said, studying the eye positions and movement patterns. "Look how it tilts its head when we move around inside the station. It's trying to understand what we are. It's trying to figure out how to kill us," Commander Voss corrected. Every previous expedition reported the same stalking behavior before. The attacks began. Tommy shook his head. "Ah!" "But what if they're wrong? What if previous expeditions were attacked because they acted like threats instead of visitors?" "Tommy, this thing could tear our station apart if it wanted to," Dr. Kell said firmly. "We're only safe because of our shields and armor." "Then why?" "Hasn't it tried?" Tommy asked. "It's been watching us all day. If it wanted to attack, wouldn't it have done it by now?" Before anyone could answer, the lights inside the station flickered. Pip chittered nervously as she checked the power systems. "Small power drain. Nothing serious, but we should conserve energy during the night cycle." As they settled in for the night, taking turns on watch duty, the shadow maw remained outside their station. Sometimes they could hear it moving around their perimeter, its large feet making soft sounds on the jungle floor. Other times, it was completely silent, visible except for the steady reading on their biodash scanner. Tommy volunteered for the midnight watch, sitting alone in the darkened station while the others slept. Through the observation window, he could see those glowing yellow eyes watching him from the tree line. Instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of connection with the creature outside. "What are you thinking about out there?" he whispered to the shadow maw. "Are you as curious about us as we are about you?" The eyes seemed to move closer, and Tommy could make out more details of the creature's form. It was definitely massive, with broad shoulders and powerful limbs, but there was something about the way it held itself that didn't seem aggressive. It looked more like a dog sitting patiently outside a house, Waiting to see what the people inside would do, Tommy made a decision that would have horrified his crewmates if they had been awake. He quietly moved to the station's emergency supplies and pulled out a standard field ration pack. The food was designed to be nutritious for most known species, including humans. Moving carefully to avoid waking the others, Tommy went to the station's airlock. His hand shook slightly as he disabled the security locks and opened the inner door. The airlock was designed for emergency exits, with its own independent power supply and communication system. Tommy stepped into the small chamber and sealed the inner door behind him. Through the outer door's window, he could see the shadow maws. Eyes, now very close. The creature had moved almost to the edge of their defensive perimeter. Drawn by the sounds Tommy was making, taking a deep breath, Tommy opened the outer airlock door and stepped outside into the alien jungle night. The shadow maw was enormous. It's even larger than the holographic displays had suggested. Its dark scales seemed to absorb the station's lights, making it look like a living shadow with glowing eyes. But instead of attacking immediately, the creature simply stared at the small human who had voluntarily left his safe shelter. Tommy sat down cross-legged on the jungle floor, about 10 feet away from the massive predator. He opened his field ration and began eating slowly, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening. After a few bites, he tore off half of the food bar and gently tossed it toward the shadow maw. "I don't know if you eat this kind of food," Tommy said quietly, "but you're welcome to try it if you want." Inside the research station, Dr. Kell woke up and immediately noticed Tommy's empty sleeping area. When she looked out the observation window and saw him sitting peacefully next to the galaxy's most feared predator,
Ow.
she had to cover her mouth to keep from screaming. Dr. Kell watched in frozen terror as Tommy sat calmly eating his field ration just 10 feet away from the massive shadow maw. The creature's yellow eyes studied the young human with obvious intelligence, tilting its large head as if trying to understand this strange behavior. Instead of attacking, the predator lowered its nose to sniff the piece of food bar Tommy had thrown toward it. The shadow maw picked up the food with surprising gentleness, using just the tips of its deadly claws. It examined the ration carefully before taking a small, cautious bite. After a moment, it ate the rest of the offering and looked back at Tommy with what almost seemed like appreciation. "Hello there," Tommy said softly, as if he were greeting a neighbor's dog instead of the galaxy's most feared predator. "I'm Tommy. I know you probably can't understand me, but I wanted to meet you properly." Dr. Kell quietly woke Commander Voss and the others, pointing frantically toward the window. The security chief's eyes went wide when he saw Tommy sitting peacefully next to the shadow maw. He immediately moved toward the weapons controls, but Dr. Kell grabbed his arm. "Oh, don't," she whispered urgently. "Any sudden movements or energy weapons fire might trigger an attack. Tommy is somehow keeping it calm." Outside, Tommy continued talking to the creature in a gentle, conversational tone. "You know, you remind me of my dog back on Earth. His name was Rex, and he was almost as big as you are." "Not really. But he seemed huge when I was little. He used to follow me around everywhere, just like you've been following our station." The shadow maw settled into a more comfortable position, lowering itself until it was lying on the jungle floor with its massive head resting on its front legs. The pose was remarkably similar to a large dog relaxing in the sun. "Rex was really smart too," Tommy continued, finishing his ration bar. "I could learn new tricks and remember people's names. My mom said he understood more human words than most people realized. I bet you're the same way, aren't you? You understand more than anyone gives you credit for." Inside the station, Nyx was frantically checking her communication equipment. "I'm recording everything," she whispered to the others. "If Tommy survives this, the xenobiology community is going to want to study every second of this interaction." "When Tommy survives this," Dr. Kell corrected firmly, though her voice was tight with worry. "He's doing something incredible out there. You look at the creature's body language. It's completely relaxed." The shadow maw made a low sound, somewhere between a rumble and a purr. Tommy smiled and nodded as if the creature had said something meaningful. "You're probably wondering what we're doing on your planet, aren't you? We're scientists. We study living things because we think they're amazing and important. My mom taught me that every creature has its own story to tell." As the night progressed, Tommy and the shadow maw remained in their peaceful standoff. The creature showed no signs of aggression. Instead, seeming genuinely interested in Tommy's continued chatter about Earth animals, his family, and his dreams of discovering new species throughout the galaxy. When dawn broke over the jungle canopy, Tommy finally stood up and stretched. "I should probably go back inside now. My friends are worried about me. But maybe we can talk again later?" The Shadow Maw rose as well, towering over the small human. For a moment, Dr. Kell thought the predator might finally attack. Instead, the creature made another low, rumbling sound and touched Tommy's shoulder. Gently, with one massive claw. The gesture was careful and deliberate, like a handshake between old friends. Tommy grinned and patted the creature's scaled arm. "I'll call you Magnus. You look like a Magnus to me. Strong and dignified." He walked slowly back toward the research station, and Magnus watched him go before disappearing into the jungle shadows. When Tommy entered the airlock, he found his entire team waiting for him, with expressions ranging from amazement to anger. Commander Voss was the first to speak, his voice a low growl of frustration. "That was the most reckless, irresponsible thing I've ever seen," the security chief said. "You could have been killed instantly. That creature could have torn you apart without even trying." "But he didn't," Tommy replied simply. "Magnus isn't a mindless killer. He's intelligent and curious, just like us. He was trying to understand what we are and why we're here." "Magnus," Dr. Kell asked weakly. "That's what I'm calling him." He needed a name. Tommy moved to his workstation and began reviewing the night's scanner data. "Look at these readings. It's heart rate, breathing patterns. Stress indicators, they all show calm, controlled behavior. There's no aggression here." Dr. Kell studied the biological data Tommy was pointing to, and her scientific mind began to override her fear. "You're right. These readings don't match what we'd expect from a stalking predator. If anything, they suggest curiosity and social behavior." Over the following days, Tommy's routine became both incredible and terrifying to watch. Each morning, he would go outside the station to spend time with Magnus. The massive Shadow Maw would emerge from the jungle like clockwork, approaching Tommy with obvious pleasure and greeting him with those gentle rumbling sounds. Tommy brought different foods each day, sharing his meals with Magnus and observing the creature's preferences and reactions. He discovered that Magnus was omnivorous, enjoying both the protein bars and the dried fruit from Tommy's emergency rations. More importantly, he began to understand Magnus's body language and vocalizations. Trying to communicate complex ideas, Tommy explained to Dr. Kell during one of their planning sessions. Those different rumbles mean different things. Short, quick sounds usually mean he's interested or excited. Longer, deeper sounds seem to indicate contentment or agreement. Even more remarkably, Magnus began bringing gifts. The third day, he presented Tommy with a collection of unusual jungle plants, carefully arranged as if he understood that the humans were interested in botanical specimens. On the fourth day, he brought a small, colorful creature that appeared to be sleeping peacefully in his massive claws. "He's helping us collect samples," Tommy said with amazement, as Magnus gently placed the small animal in one of their specimen containers. "He understands what we're doing here, and he wants to help." Dr. Kell recorded everything, documenting the first peaceful contact between humans and Shadow Maws in galactic history. "Tommy, what you're doing is rewriting everything we thought we knew about these creatures. If Magnus is representative of his species, then every previous expedition failed because they approached with fear and weapons instead of friendship and curiosity." But the most surprising development came on the fifth day, when Tommy noticed Magnus displaying protective behavior. A large, aggressive creature emerged from the jungle undergrowth, moving toward Tommy with obvious hostile intent. Before Tommy could even react, Magnus positioned himself between the human and the threat, making deep warning sounds that sent the other creature retreating quickly into the jungle. "He's protecting me," Tommy said with wonder. "Magnus sees me as part of his territory, something worth defending." Commander Voss, who had been skeptical of Tommy's methods from the beginning, found himself grudgingly impressed. "I've never seen anything like it. That creature is acting more like a guard dog than a predator, because that's what he is," Tommy replied. "Magnus isn't evil or mindlessly violent. He's a social creature who's been misunderstood for generations. previous expeditions, saw a monster where they should have seen a potential friend. Inside the research station, the team continued their scientific work, but now with Magnus's active assistance. The Shadow Maw would disappear for hours at a time, returning with samples from deep within the jungle that the humans could never have reached safely. Their specimen collection grew rapidly, far exceeding the Science Council's original requirements. But Tommy knew their peaceful interlude couldn't last forever. Each night, as he sat talking with Magnus under the alien stars, he wondered what would happen when their mission ended and they had to leave Kethsaven behind. He had formed a genuine friendship with this magnificent creature. The thought of saying goodbye filled him with sadness. What Tommy didn't know was that their time together was about to be cut short by circumstances beyond their control, and that Magnus was about to reveal the most incredible secret of all about his species. On the 7th day of their mission, Magnus surprised Tommy by acting differently than usual. Instead of settling down for their normal routine of shared meals and quiet conversation, the massive Shadow Maw remained standing and made a series of complex rumbling sounds. His body language suggested excitement and anticipation, as if he wanted Tommy to follow him somewhere. "I think he wants to show me something," Tommy told Dr. Kell through his communication device. He had started wearing a small transmitter so the team could monitor his conversations with Magnus from inside the research station. "Tommy, you've never gone more than 50 meters from the station," Dr. Kell replied nervously. "We don't know what's out there in the deeper jungle." "Magnus has kept me safe so far," Tommy pointed out. "He's been protecting me from other dangerous creatures for days. I trust him." Commander Voss's voice crackled through the communicator. "The bioscanners are showing increased activity in the jungle around us. Multiple large life forms moving in coordinated patterns. Something big is happening out there." Tommy looked at Magnus, who was still making those excited rumbling sounds and gesturing toward the dense jungle with his massive head. The creature's yellow eyes were bright with intelligence, and there was something almost urgent about his behavior. "He really wants me to see something important," Tommy said. "I'm going to follow him, but I'll keep the communicator open so you can track my position." Before anyone could protest further, Tommy began walking alongside Magnus as the Shadow Maw led him deeper into the alien jungle. The path Magnus chose was surprisingly clear, as if it had been used regularly by large creatures. Tommy noticed that the plants along the route showed signs of careful cultivation rather than random growth. "The vegetation here is different," Tommy reported to his team. "It looks like someone has been managing this area, encouraging certain plants to grow while removing others. This isn't wild jungle, this is more like a garden." Magnus led Tommy through a series of natural clearings connected by well-maintained paths. In each clearing, Tommy saw evidence of intelligence and planning. Water had been channeled into small pools, fruit-bearing plants were arranged in organized rows, and there were even what looked like primitive tool caches made from shaped stone and carved wood. "Dr. Kell, are you getting this data?" Tommy asked excitedly. "This whole area shows signs of agricultural management. Someone is actively farming this jungle." "The bioscanner readings are incredible," Dr. Kell replied, her voice filled with scientific amazement. "I'm detecting at least 8 large life forms converging on your position. Tommy, you need to be very careful." Magnus led Tommy up a gentle slope covered with flowering vines. At the top, they emerged into a large valley hidden deep within the jungle. What Tommy saw there made him stop walking and stare in complete amazement. The valley was home to an entire community of Shadow Maws. 8 massive creatures moved through the carefully maintained space with obvious purpose and organization. Some were tending to plants, using their large claws with surprising delicacy to harvest fruits and vegetables. Others were caring for smaller Shadow Maws that could only be juveniles, teaching them how to use simple tools and showing them which plants were safe to eat. "There's a whole family here," Tommy whispered into his communicator. "Magnus brought me to meet his pack." The adult Shadow Maws noticed Tommy's arrival and approached slowly, their massive forms moving with calm dignity rather than aggression. Magnus made a series of complex vocalizations, and the others responded with their own rumbling sounds. Tommy, it looked like Magnus was introducing him to his family, explaining who this strange small creature was and why he had brought him here. One of the largest shadow maws, even bigger than Magnus, approached Tommy directly. This creature had silver markings along its scales that suggested advanced age, and its yellow eyes held a depth of intelligence that was almost startling. Tommy instinctively understood that this was the pack leader, the elder of this community. "Hello," Tommy said respectfully, giving a small bow. "Thank you for letting me visit your home." The elder shadow maw studied Tommy for a long moment, then made a low, welcoming sound. It reached out with one massive claw and gently touched Tommy's head, almost like a blessing or formal greeting. The gesture clearly indicated acceptance, and the other shadow maws visibly relaxed. Over the next several hours, Tommy was given a tour of the shadow maw community that revolutionized everything he thought he knew about these creatures. They weren't mindless predators or simple animals. They were a sophisticated society with complex social structures, advanced problem-solving abilities, and even primitive technology. "They have workshops," Tommy reported to his amazed team. "Get this, they're making tools from jungle materials. These wooden spears aren't just for hunting, they're used for farming, for reaching high fruit, for digging irrigation channels." The juvenile shadow maws were particularly fascinating to observe. They played games that clearly taught important survival skills, practiced using tools under adult supervision, and showed the same curiosity about Tommy that human children might show about an interesting new animal. "The young ones are learning," Tommy continued his commentary. "The adults are actively teaching them skills. This isn't instinctive behavior, this is education, culture being passed down through generations." But the most remarkable discovery came when Tommy realized what the shadow maws were actually growing in their carefully maintained gardens. Many of the plants were species that the Science Council needed for their medical research, the exact specimens that previous expeditions had died trying to collect. "They've been cultivating the cure," Tommy said with amazement. "The shadow maws have been growing and protecting the very plants we need to stop the Rigel plague. They're not just intelligent, they're conservationists." Magnus seemed to understand Tommy's excitement and led him to a special grove where the most valuable medicinal plants were grown. The shadow maws had been protecting these species for generations, ensuring their survival in an ecosystem that could be harsh and unpredictable. "Dr. Kell, they're willing to share," Tommy said, as Magnus began carefully harvesting samples of the precious plants. "Magnus is collecting specimens for us. They understand that we need these plants to help people." But Tommy's wonder at discovering this incredible civilization was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Captain Drix aboard the Harmony. The captain's voice crackled through the communicator with obvious stress. "All teams return to the ship immediately. We've received an emergency alert from Galactic Command. The mining corporation Stellar Extraction has dispatched a fleet to Keth 7. They have legal permits to strip mine this entire jungle for rare minerals." Tommy felt his heart sink as he translated the captain's words. "When will they arrive?" 68 hours, Captain Drix replied grimly. "They're bringing industrial excavation equipment and a full security force. Once they begin operations, this entire ecosystem will be destroyed." Tommy looked around at the peaceful shadow maw community, at the juveniles playing in their garden paradise, at the elders who had trusted him enough to share their most precious secrets. In less than 3 days, all of this would be gone, reduced. 2 sterile mining pits and toxic waste. Magnus seemed to sense Tommy's distress and made questioning sounds. The other shadow maws gathered around, their intelligent eyes reflecting concern for their human visitors' obvious unhappiness. "I have to warn them," Tommy said to his team. "The shadow maws need to know what's coming. Maybe they can evacuate too." "Another part of the planet?" "Tommy, there is no other part," Dr. Kell replied sadly. "Stellar Extraction has permits for the entire planet. And even if the shadow maws could relocate, this is clearly their ancestral home. These gardens represent generations of work." Tommy stood in the center of the shadow maw community, surrounded by magnificent creatures who had shown him nothing but friendship and trust. They had shared their knowledge, their home, and their most precious resources. Now he had to find a way to save them from destruction. Armed with nothing but his growing understanding of their culture and his absolute refusal to let his new friends be destroyed by corporate greed, the young human began to form a plan that was so audacious, so completely unprecedented, that it would either save the Shadow Maws or get everyone killed in the attempt. Tommy spent the night in the Shadow Maw village, working frantically with Dr. Kell's linguistic analysis equipment to establish a more sophisticated communication system with his new friends. He had less than 60 hours to do something that no one in galactic history had ever attempted: teach an entire species to speak for themselves in the galactic community. The Elder Shadow Maw, whom Tommy had started calling Elder Rex after his childhood dog, showed remarkable aptitude for learning basic galactic standard phrases. Using a combination of hand signals, simple drawings in the dirt, and patient repetition, Tommy began teaching the most essential concepts. "Mine," Tommy said, pointing to himself, and then to a sample container. "Yours," he continued, pointing to Elder Rex and then to the medicinal plants. "Home," he said, gesturing broadly at the village around them. Elder Rex's deep voice rumbled as he attempted to copy the sounds. "Min, yours, whom." The pronunciation was rough, but the meaning was clearly understood. Other Shadow Maws gathered around, watching intently as their elder learned this new form of communication. Dr. Kell's voice crackled through Tommy's communicator. "Linguistic patterns are incredible. Their vocal cords can actually produce most galactic standard sounds. They just need practice with the syntax and grammar." Tommy worked through the night, teaching essential phrases about ownership, territory, protection, and intelligence. Magnus proved to be an excellent translator, already understanding many concepts from his days of conversation with Tommy. He helped teach the other Shadow Maws, demonstrating the new words with actions and gestures. When dawn broke, Tommy had established basic communication with the entire pack. More importantly, he had explained the concept of galactic law and species protection rights. The Shadow Maws understood that there were rules governing how different species could interact, and that intelligent beings had special protections under those rules. "The mining ships are coming today," Tommy explained to Elder Rex using simple words and hand gestures. "Bad humans want to destroy your home, but good humans have laws to protect smart people like you." Elder Rex rumbled thoughtfully, then spoke carefully in his deep, accented galactic standard. "We... smart people." "Yes," Tommy said firmly. "You grow food, you teach children, you make tools, you protect your home. You are very smart people." The concept seemed to energize the entire Shadow Maw community. They had always known they were intelligent, but they had never understood that this intelligence might be recognized and protected by the larger galaxy. Elder Rex called all the adults together for what was clearly a formal discussion, their rumbling voices mixing in complex harmonies as they debated this new information. "Captain," Drix's voice came through the communicator with urgent news. "Tommy, the mining fleet has arrived early. 3 massive ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding that we evacuate the system immediately." "How long do we have?" Tommy asked, his heart racing. "They're giving us 6 hours to clear the area before they begin preliminary bombardment to clear landing zones." Tommy looked at the Shadow Maw community around him, at Magnus, who had become his closest friend, at the juveniles playing peacefully in their gardens. 6 hours to save an entire civilization? "I need to get back to the research station," Tommy told Elder Rex. "The bad humans are here, but I have a plan to stop them." Elder Rex nodded gravely. "We... help, Tommy." When Tommy returned to the research station with Magnus and Elder Rex following behind him, his human crewmates were amazed to hear the Shadow Maws speaking basic galactic standard. Dr. Kell immediately began recording everything. This historic first contact between species. "Captain Drix," Tommy called through the communicator to the Harmony orbiting above. "I need you to patch me through to the mining fleet commander," invoking Section 7 of the Galactic Species Protection Act. There was a long pause before Captain Drix responded. "Tommy, that section only applies to recognized sentient species. The Shadow Maws aren't listed in any galactic databases." "They are now," Tommy replied firmly. "I'm making first contact on behalf of the Terran Federation. Elder Rex is going to speak for his people." The main communication screen in the research station flickered to life, showing the bridge of the mining fleet's command ship. A heavy-set human in corporate uniform stared out at them with obvious impatience. "This is Fleet Commander Harris of stellar extraction. You have 4 hours to evacuate this system before we begin mining operations. Any interference with legal corporate activities will be reported too. Commander Harris stopped talking when he saw Elder Rex's massive form standing. Behind Tommy, the Shadow Maw's yellow eyes stared directly into the camera with obvious intelligence. Commander Harris, Tommy said formally, I'd like you to meet Elder Rex, the leader of the Shadow Maw people of Keth 7. He has something to say to you. Elder Rex stepped forward, his massive frame filling the camera's view. When he spoke, the deep voice was careful and deliberate, each word pronounced with obvious effort but unmistakable intelligence. This ... are home, Elder Rex said slowly. We ... are smart people. We ... grow ... medicine ... plants. We ... protect ... this place ... for ... many ... generations. Commander Harris's face went pale. Behind him, other corporate officials began frantically checking legal databases and consulting with their lawyers. First contact with a new sentient species was a massive legal and political event that could shut down any corporate operation. You ... destroy ... our home, Elder Rex continued, gaining confidence with each word. Galactic ... law protects ... smart ... people. Dr. Kell stepped up beside Tommy, her scientific credentials giving weight to his claims. Commander Harris, I'm Dr. Kell, senior xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Harmony. I can confirm that the Shadow Maws demonstrate all the criteria for recognized sentience, tool use, agriculture, education of young, complex social structures, and now clearly established communication abilities. Tommy pulled up the data they had collected over the past week. The Shadow Maws have been cultivating the medicinal plants that the Science Council needs for the Rigel plague cure. They're not just intelligent, they're actively contributing to galactic medical research. Magnus stepped forward and added his own voice to the conversation. We ... help ... sick people ... in stars. Commander Harris looked like he was having the worst day of his corporate career. I need to consult with my superiors. This situation is far beyond my authority.
Yes.
Tommy watched as his simple plan grew into a galactic incident. News of the Shadow Maws spread rapidly through communication networks. Scientists, politicians, and lawyers from dozens of worlds began arriving in the Keth 7 system. The mining operation was suspended pending a full investigation by the Galactic Council. Representatives from the Science Council were particularly interested when Elder Rex offered to share the Shadow Maw's knowledge of medicinal plant cultivation. The cure for the Rigel plague would still be developed. But now, with the full cooperation and guidance of the people who had been protecting those plants for generations, 6 months later, Tommy stood in the same jungle clearing where he had first met Magnus, but everything had changed. The Shadow Maw village was now a protected cultural site, with galactic tourism bringing visitors from across the galaxy to meet the newest members of the galactic community. Tommy had been promoted to senior xenobiologist and appointed as the official liaison between the Galactic Council and Keth 7. His unconventional approach to first contact had become known throughout the galaxy as the Walsh Protocol, and it was now standard procedure for all exploration missions. Magnus had learned to speak Galactic Standard fluently and served as the primary translator for his people. He still preferred Tommy's company above all others. Now the two friends spent their days exploring the jungle together, documenting new species and helping the Shadow Maws navigate their new role in galactic society. Tommy, Magnus said one evening, as they sat watching the sunset over the jungle canopy, "Thank you for seeing us as people instead of monsters." Tommy smiled and patted his friend's massive arm. "Thank you for showing me that the scariest-looking creatures can have the biggest hearts." Elder Rex approached them, moving with the dignity that had made him such an effective ambassador for his people. "The young ones ask when you will teach them more about the stars," he said in his careful galactic standard. "Tomorrow," Tommy promised, "we'll start with basic astronomy and work our way up to interstellar travel. Who knows? Maybe some of them will want to become explorers themselves someday. As the three friends talked under the alien stars, Tommy reflected on how much his life had changed since that first terrifying night. When he had stepped outside the research station to offer a field ration to a creature everyone said was a mindless killer. Sometimes the best discoveries came not from sophisticated equipment or advanced theories, but from the simple act of treating another being with kindness and respect. The galaxy was a much more interesting place when you realized that every creature, no matter how frightening it might appear, had its own story to tell and its own unique perspective to share. Tommy had learned that lesson from Magnus and the Shadow Maws, and he planned to spend the rest of his career helping others learn it, too.